It's funny, you know what I feel like one of the biggest kind of misconceptions, or one of the things people don't know about with real estate, well, there are a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people think and don't realize, but it circles around a deposit on the purchase of a house. A lot of people think, you know, when you sign an agreement to purchase and sale and the buyer gives the deposit, it's held in trust, usually by the listing brokerage, and then goes towards the purchase price on closing. But a lot of people think if the buyer doesn't come through and close on the property, then the seller automatically gets the deposit, or the buyer automatically loses that deposit, and that's the extent of it. But it's absolutely not the case. The deposit's held in trust and is released when a deal closes, or when when a transaction is completed. If it doesn't complete, the deposit is then held to cover the losses of the seller. So if the seller has to resell the property and sells it for $100,000 less, and they're holding a $150,000 deposit, then $100,000 of that will go towards that loss, plus any other losses that they have with carrying the properties and expenses and things like that. But they don't automatically just get that. That has to be awarded to them, or it has to be agreed upon between the buyer and the seller. And at the same time, the buyer, if a buyer backs out of a deal, their exposure to that is not only that deposit amount. So let's say the $100,000. The seller, if the seller sells that property for $200,000 less, they can actually go after and sue the buyer for the additional losses that they've incurred. And in a lot of the cases that I've seen, at least, where this is the case, the buyers are on the hook, and the buyers are penalized, and the courts side with the sellers, and they have to pay the difference of the losses. So an interesting piece that a lot of people don't really understand how it works. I've dealt with it a couple times, not much, thankfully, but an interesting point of view that a lot of people, I think, misjudge.